Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode. Oh, I'm not even sure which episode this is of Amorous. I am Nick, also known as Captain Sheldon, and I'm glad to see you all back. I know it's been, again, a little while. I was not able to record last week because, lo and behold, my headset broke. Like, completely broke, and I had to order a new one, and it didn't come until I was already off to work for the weekend. Um, but let's get started today. I've got my drink with me, I've got everything set up, so let's continue on. Here. And last time, if I remember, we had gone on, I think it was the second date with, let's see what his name was. Seth, that's right. Yes, with Seth. We've already done Lex and Kobe, and apparently we also had the Club Amber's DJ in our phone. So that's cool. And now let's go ahead and see what we can do with Seth today. I'll give him a call. Our next few meetings were sadly short and very business-oriented. Seth wouldn't let me come over until he had, in his words, cleansed the apartment from ceiling to floor at least twice. Despite my insistence that not everything needed to be perfect, there was no swaying him. That said, he kept to his promise and called me often. When we weren't at coffee talking about his work on the story, he was de-drafting. Oh, sorry. That said, he kept to his promise, called me often. When we weren't at coffee talking about his work on the story, he was de-drafting. Finally, the day arrived. Seth greeted me at the coffee shop with a smile that just wouldn't quit. Alright, I believe my domicile is once again right enough with the world to accept guests. I know you've been patient with that, Sheldon. Thank you. I wanted everything to be absolutely perfect. Seth, you didn't have to go overboard with this. I'm not going to judge you on the cleanliness of your apartment. I mean, you've been to my house. Need I say more? Can't I just go a little overboard? I mean, you're helping me with my writing. I've been more prolific recently than I've been in years. Alright, I'm sorry, but that is still, it's still adorable. Just like the cute blushiness. Oh man. It's cute. Very, very cute. Shut up. I like to think that I had something to do with that. Still, I'm more than happy to come over. Should I bring anything? I'll leave that completely up to you. I should have everything covered, but I'm certainly not adverse to your personal touch. Alright, if that's not a, I'm planning something sly look, then I don't know what is. Alright then, I'll give it some thought. We were going over another story today. Your bag doesn't seem to be bulging with notebooks as per usual. Sorry, were we going over another story today? Your bag doesn't seem to be bulging with notebooks as per usual. No, not today. I've been a little too busy doing some other last-minute things before tonight. I wanted to make sure that everything was just right and, well, I forgot to write anything recently. Let's go. Aw, I was hoping to see what you had come up with next. I particularly liked that last bit of short fiction you did. Thanks. I was trying something new with the narration approach, and glad to hear you liked it, but I've also been talking your ear off about writing lately. How are things with you? Oh, well... The excessive free time has been a little draining. Not much word back on jobs yet. It's disappointing, but I'm trying to keep my spirits up. I had noticed you were a little down in the dumps and distracted. I'm sorry to hear about your issues. You know you can always come to me. I'll get by. Kobe's been asking if you're going to stop by again. He seems to like you quite a bit. I like him too, even when he gets a little flirty. I can see why he's a big part of your life. There has been one thing you haven't talked about. Did Nick's agent ever get back in touch with you? Not yet. These things do take time, and I know there's no way to rush it. It's just that the waiting is agony. I'll do my best to distract you from that as much as possible tonight then. Should I come in my suit and tie? Black tie is completely optional, though imagining you in formal wear is a very pleasing image. Oh wow. This cat's got some interesting fantasies going on there. Flattery. Flattery will get you almost everywhere with me. More flattery will get you the rest of the way. I'm a writer. I can flatter you in 5 different ways and with excessive alliteration. Man, no, stop. I'm like putty in your hands already. Oh, oh. I think this is probably my favorite character in this entire game, just because he's like a character after my own heart, you know, writer, you know, very good with words, and you know, just generally happy, and that's how I see myself. The both of us swiftly broke down into giggles. After a moment and another sip of coffee, I composed myself. I must say, you are certainly overselling the date here. I feel as though I'm going to be completely underprepared for what you have in store. I wouldn't say completely, but I do hope to inspire some awe. Is there anything I should bring? Anything I should do to prepare myself for this experience? Being that this is the first real date we've had, at least in my humble opinion, I've got to great lengths to make it self-sufficient. All I require is your attendance at 6-ish at my place. Which, may I point out, you still haven't told me the address or location of. Oh, right. I suppose I got a little ahead of myself there. He fished through his bag for a moment and produced a slip of paper, quickly scribbling down his information. Now, don't follow my footsteps and throw this in the wash. If you're late, I'll call to check in, so keep your phone on. Yes, sir. If we don't have any writing to critique, then did you want to grab some lunch or something? No dating until tonight. I don't want to spoil it. It's just lunch. We can chat about non-romantic things like the weather or the current state of sports ball. Sports ball? What the hell is sports ball? I feel like sports ball might be a sport that has to do with a ball that I might actually enjoy. Because it's sports ball. Besides, you can't have too much dating and then not want it anymore. At least, I hope you can't. I know I'm being a little silly, but you've done so much for me, intentionally or not. I want our first serious date to be perfect. Alright, just don't get your expectations too high. We're both just people after all. He smiled at me, taking my hand in his for a moment. It was nice just to be together in one place without obligations. That was what worried me most about tonight, what he might be expecting. I never considered how dangerous it might be to be dating a guy who likely got most of his ideas from reading romance novels. Oh god, that could be incredibly dangerous. Oh wow, I never actually thought of it that way. I promise, it's all well in hand and a comfortable level of hope. He glanced up at the clock over the counter and his smile shifted suddenly to a look of concern. Is that the time? Sorry, Sheldon, I need to run. Just the last few things I need to finish before our date. Now, you got the time and address? I nodded, patting the pocket where I had stowed both. Good, now I expect you there promptly. I've got plans that are very time-specific. I'll be at your door at 6 on the dot, probably with bells on. Stick with the fancy clothes, unless you're only wearing the bells. Oh, okay. This is definitely a frisky feline. He got a bit of a blush out of me, both from his comment and the soft peck on the cheek that he gave me before he stood up and placed a 10 on the table. Coffee's on me today. I'll see you tonight. I sipped slowly at my coffee, nursing it and the growing knot I felt in my belly. My relationship with Seth so far had been one strange encounter after another. I could only imagine what he had planned for tonight. Still, I wasn't about to pass up the chance to find out. Not when it meant finding out more about this adorably eccentric feline. Alright, of course, without our critique session, most of my afternoon was empty. Kobe was out with some friends, and I had the house to myself. I could only putter around for so long before I found myself staring at the closet and wondering what I should wear. You did say fancy. It had started as a joke, but once I spotted my suit hanging in the far corner of the closet, I began to reconsider. After all, if Seth was going all out, why shouldn't I? While it wasn't a perfect fit, I'd changed a bit since I last wore it, it still looked quite nice on me. The smooth, tailored lines really flattered my form. After I'd gotten myself cleaned up, dressed, and looking my best, my thoughts drifted back to the date. Seth said I didn't have to bring anything, but maybe I should anyway. Let's bring flowers. What date wouldn't be improved with a nice bouquet of flowers? Something to brighten up his home and show him just how much I appreciated what he was doing. There was a little flower cart just off the street nearby. I could swing by on my way to his apartment. Once I'd gotten myself together and made my decision, I looked down at the clock. It was getting awfully close to 6, and I hadn't left yet. I grabbed my keys, locked the house up, and got into my car. Once I'd got... Oh... Well, he said he wanted me there on the dot, so maybe we should just head straight there. Worried I'd be cutting it too close as is, I decided to just head straight there. Traffic was lighter than I expected, and after I had found a good parking spot, I glanced at the clock in my car. I was still 10 minutes early. Uh-oh. Nope. I made my way through the lobby and up the well-appointed elevators. It appeared that Seth hadn't been kidding about being a trust fund kid. The apartment building itself was ritzier than my home. Once I had gotten to his door after checking the note twice, I knocked. Just a minute. I heard some scrambling, a few muttered expletives, and finally the sounds of metal pans colliding with wooden cupboards. I was about to express my concern when Seth opened the door. I'm pleasantly surprised to see I was right vis-a-vis the suit. Very dapper and flattering. You should wear it more often. You're early. I mean, it's good and all, but I've still got some pots to attend to on the stove. That's fine. I just didn't want to be late is all. And I appreciate that. Still, it may be a few moments. Make yourself at home. Once inside, it was clear that Seth wasn't kidding about his apartment. Despite the rather posh interior of the building, his own apartment was very sparsely furnished. Aside from a few pictures and bric-a-brac, what? I have never heard that phrase before. Bric-a-brac. I'm gonna guess it means something along the lines of just random stuff, you know, that people kind of accumulate. Alright, so aside from all that, the living room held only a couch, coffee table, and a TV on a stand. It's nice, simple, clean. Seth smiled at me before setting down a steaming pot on the small dining room table. Devoid of any sense that a person actually lives here? Everyone's got their own taste. Speaking of which, where did you learn how to cook? It smells delicious. Thanks. I cannot take all the credit, however. Most of it goes to the cooking channel and the cookbook I snagged from the library. Of course, I wasn't sure what you might like to eat, so I may have gotten a little overboard in terms of available dishes. That's alright. It's why they invented resealable containers and microwaves. I'm impressed though. You said you hadn't really ever cooked. He chuckled and took my hand, leading me to the spread laid out on the table. Again, he wasn't kidding. There were half a dozen dishes crammed into the small space. Rolls were neatly nestled in a basket, and 3 different types of spreads, from savory to sweet, laid out on the kitchen table. On the kitchen counter. You made all this? For just the 2 of us? Turns out, being rather new to cooking, I wasn't aware of portion size. I mean, I thought it was quite a bit of food when I got the ingredients, but I guess I assumed it would condense or Reduce whatever it is that chefs do to food. Man, I could take leftovers and you'd still be set for a while. Or still be set for a while. Lots of L's there. Be sure to save room for dessert. I baked 3 dozen cookies. My eyes went wide as Seth smiled awkwardly at me. Not that I'm a classically trained chef myself, but I couldn't even finish the thought before I burst out laughing. Next time you should pay closer attention to the recipe. They'll probably save you some money on your grocery bills. The two of us dug in, filling up our plates and heading back to the coffee table to eat. It was exciting and relaxing. A host of emotions all at the same time. It was easy to forget my anxieties and just lose myself in the moment. Seth was equally chatty, discussing his many attempts to inspire himself, the seemingly crazy lengths he'd gone to in the hopes of broadening his horizons. I'm embarrassed to say, I actually drank half the bottle. The revolting taste still haunts me even after 12 full cups of mouthwash and a handful of mints. I'm still unable to go anywhere near fresh seafood. Soon enough, dinner was set aside, along with enough leftovers to feed an army. He insisted I take some home, not only because he didn't have the space, but he wanted to thank Kobe again. We sat on the couch, relaxing and nibbling on a cookie every now and again. It was then that I noticed the large curtain across from us, closed but already a ruddy hue from the sunset. Seth smiled as he noticed my interest, getting up and pulling gently on the cord. The wispy curtains parted, and in a moment I saw the whole city spread out before me. Windows glistened in golds and reds. I could even see my own house far in the distance, just above the horizon. Seth stepped next to me, touching a paw gently to the glass. It's really why I picked this place to move after college. The rent was absurd, and the building was, to me, gaudy and pretentious. But when I was in this empty room, I couldn't make it to the regular viewing, and convinced the realtor to give me one later that day. I was tired, grumpy from seeing my grades on my final. Once I looked out that window, though, I saw the harvest moon hanging there, almost transparent in the twilight. The clouds were a deep purple, and a few flecks of red spread across them. That cinched the deal. I signed the lease that second. This view was something I had been looking for, maybe a piece of in a bigger puzzle. I found it, though, and it's been a source of comfort even in the worst of it. Hearing how much it meant, what kind of an impact it had on him, all I could think of was how empty this place would be if he left. When he left. My silence drew a curious look from him. Gently he touched my shoulder, and I snapped back to the moment. What's wrong? You aren't enjoying the view? Oh. It's better not to hide stuff, but it also said that I didn't want to burden him with all that stuff tonight, but it's not the view. Have you thought about what will happen next? You could get a publishing contract. You could see your name in print. But think about how much you'd have to travel, how little you'd actually be around. I know, I've been trying to forget about it. It's likely one of the reasons I wound up cooking for 2,000 instead of 2. I'm scared, Sheldon. I don't want to go through this again. What do you mean, again? This isn't your first book? He shook his head and smiled. I need to show you something. I'll be right back. He stepped away, leaving me there in the fading sunlight, gazing out over the sea of buildings. I wanted us to stay in that moment, stay right here until there was nothing else. It was selfish, maybe even petty, but I wanted it more than anything else right then. I can completely and utterly relate to that. So many times, I just didn't want to think about what was next. Especially when I knew it wasn't going to turn out good, and just enjoy the good times while they lasted. He stepped out of the bedroom and back to my side, touching my shoulder. He drew my attention to what was in his paw. It was a sun-bleached, tattered notebook, one I had never seen before. He held it out to me. Go ahead, read it. It's embarrassing, but it's something I need to share. Confused, I opened it. Mostly it was pages of rough doodles, a few snippets of bad poetry, and some notes on classes. The few dates I saw placed it probably in his high school years. However, one thing stood out. It was a short, clumsy but innocent story of a young man who admired a fellow student. In awkwardly beautiful prose, it spoke of the distance, the ache, and the loathing that he could not approach the person he desired. It ended on a silly, sappy note, the focus of his affections, finding the notebook and falling equally in love. A short note followed, though the name of its intended reader was scratched out in black ink. It read, "I can't say this with my voice, so I used my words. I love you." I closed the notebook and looked up at Seth. It was my first story. He was the first person to inspire me enough to try to write. Down the road, I may remember it as some fleeting high school crush, but the wound still aches sometimes. You never showed it to him? No, I did. What little confidence I had propelled my hand forward while we were in the library. He read it, page after page, in complete silence. When he was done and looked back into my expectant eyes, he said nothing. He simply laid the notebook on the table in front of me, got out of his chair, and left the room. I didn't see him the next day or the day after. When I finally asked someone, they told me his parents had moved and he'd gone with them. Seth. For 2 years, I assumed it was me, that I was the reason he left. Part of me still thinks that, and all of me thought I would never recover. The folly of youth and the power of infatuation. Maybe you were more right than you thought. Maybe my experience would be better spent on romance novels. I wanted to say something, anything to turn the conversation away from this topic. I opened my mouth to speak, but halted when I saw Seth's lips were spread into a smile. What I want to say, what I'm saying as awkwardly as I did in that notebook, is that I care about you. Intentionally or not, you drew me back out of that haze of loss and regret. You were enough to draw a whole book out of me. You're the reason I'm here, that I even got here in the first place, and I'm not going to let you go. Not like I did the last time I had this chance. He stepped forward and slid his paws into my hands, pressing himself close as he kissed my cheek softly. So, let's forget about it for the moment. Let's just enjoy this for a few more minutes, before your practicality and my anxiety bring it back up. Alright. Alright, for you, I can try. I can't swear I won't think about it, but I'll try to stay here. That's all I need right now. It's been too perfect of an evening to let it go so soon. It's those small moments of just pure romance, of the need to just live in the now. Those, I don't know, for some people it's living to see those moments in life. Besides, sorry about that. I just very playing this game makes me think about some of my own experiences sometimes. Besides, I seem to remember our celebrations requiring more than just dinner. I promised dancing too. Releasing my hand for the moment, his paw tapped a button just below the TV stand. A moment or two later, after a hiss and a whir, a soft, simple melody began to play over hidden speakers. His paw slid back into my hand and squeezed softly as he drew close to me and began to sway with in slow measured time. It's not the same music as the club, but at least we can talk over this. I squeezed his paws back softly, drawing him close as the two of us began to glide across the soft carpeted floor. His eyes remained locked on mine, glimmering in the dimming sunlight as all but the dance faded from my mind. It didn't make it any easier, holding him close to me, feeling his silken fur against my skin. I didn't want to lose this either, but could I in good conscience be so selfish? Seth lowered his head, pressing his cheek against my chest and purring softly, almost humming with the music. I couldn't help but smile in return. I wasn't quite sure when the music stopped. Our bodies still pressed close, but something stirred us enough from that embrace. I glanced at the clock and sighed softly. Please, don't leave. I don't want to. I hope you know that by now. But dinner's over. It's nearly dark. Then, stay here for the night. Stay with me. You're beautiful, Sheldon. Intoxicating and amazing, and 100 other words I know, but just fall short on my tongue. It's not fair to use your writerly wiles on me, you know. You know what I say? In this moment, in this perfect moment, I say fuck what's fair. I say I want you, Sheldon. Do you want me too? The words caught in my throat, my body tensing as he lifted his lips upward and pressed them firmly against my own. His paws released my hands, wrapping around my waist and folding one over the other at the small of my back. It had been too long since I felt this, the aching need of another, the passionate embrace. My hands came to rest on his shoulders, cupping them and pulling his body even tighter against my own. A gasp escaped his lips, swallowed eagerly by my tongue before it could escape. It was as if a dam had burst, my needs overwhelming my senses. It was no longer about loss, about the moment slipping away. It was about us, together and always, exploring each other. Well, that is shirtless. That is very shirtless. Oh, Sheldon. I need you, Sheldon. Show me how much you need me too, please. Okay. I hate this music on this screen. It's just that ruins the mood in a lot of ways. I dreamed vividly that night of Seth beneath me, of the warmth and softness of his fur. I saw him standing, smiling, his glasses perched on his muzzle and notebook in hand. I saw him walk away from me, my hand outstretched as with each step he grew dimmer, fuzzier until I could no longer see him. I remember sobbing softly, and then a light. Small bracket, backslash, L, small closing bracket. I woke up in his bed, cover tucked gently around me, and to the sounds of a shower in the distance. The sunlight streamed in through the windows, making me blink in reflex until my eyes could adjust. The dream still lingered in my mind, my eyes watering. I got out of bed, making my way into the living room. Good morning. I admit it was an unorthodox way to keep you here for the night, but I have no regrets. I hope you don't either. Yeah, none at all. Beyond the obvious lack of toothbrush or my favorite body wash. I hope we can rectify those issues soon. I laughed for a moment, stopping only as I watched Seth's expression fall. His gaze lingered at something beyond my shoulder, and as I turned to look, I also drew quiet. The tiny white box atop his end table near the door gave off a steady red blink at regular intervals. It meant he had a message, and the both of us knew what that could portend. I saw the caller ID this morning. It was from Donna, Nick's agent. Shouldn't you listen to it? I mean, you've come so far, and I choked on the sentence, swallowing the words that I didn't want to hear. I don't know if I can. It can only mean change and upheaval. I don't know if I'm ready for that particular part of my life. If there's one thing that I've learned about relationships, it's that you need, even when it means loss, even when it means hurt and pain, it's your responsibility as a significant other to someone else to urge them on and push them to taking the leaps that you know they want in life. It not doing that, and I have convinced people not to do it before. It always leads to regret down the line. The regret of what would my life have been if I'd chosen to go instead of to stay. Urge him on. Life's always going to be scary and full of risk. I took one getting to know you, spending time with you, and making love to you last night. Still, we can't move on if we aren't able to take risks. It's not like continuing to hide from it will change the outcome. It's not a Schrödinger brand answering machine. He stood over the machine for a long moment, staring down at the pulsing light. I stood, walking behind and placing my hand on his shoulder. He smiled back at me for a moment before his finger touched the button. Hi there, Seth. This is Donna from the Independence Literacy Agency. Nick passed on a section of your work to me, and I was calling to discuss it with you. We both held our breath, my throat dry as I waited what seemed to be an eternity for the woman's voice to continue. It's surprisingly good, particularly for an early draft. Don't get me wrong, it needs an editor, but I think that's something we can do for you. Please, come by the office sometime today before 1. I'll let my receptionist know to expect you. If you can't make it, call me back, and we'll reschedule. We did it. We actually did it. No, you did it. You're the writer. Seth turned to face me, a smile still prominent on his face. No, I mean we. You're in this too, remember? I chuckled to myself and glanced over at the clock. It was just a little past 11. Well then, I guess this half of a we should get in the shower. No good showing up to our new agency naked and disheveled. That's the spirit. I'm afraid your suit was a casualty of our recreation last night. There isn't time to run it to the cleaners. That's alright, I'm sure we can scrounge up something. The feeling of the warm water eased my aching muscles. It did little to assuage the knot in my stomach, though. My current unemployed position might make this easy at the start, but I couldn't rely on Seth alone. What would I be doing while he was rushing around? I couldn't expect him to carry me. I took a deep breath and let these thoughts wash away down the drain. There wouldn't be a time for specifics later. For now I was going... there would be a time for specifics later. For now I was going to help Seth achieve his dream. That much was enough for now. Cleaned, dressed, and together, we stood at the door. It seemed somehow more imposing as we made to leave the inviting warmth of Seth's bed. I felt his paw seek out my hand, twining his fingers through my own as he squeezed it softly. Once we walk through that door, everything around us may change, but I promise this right here won't. My hand clutched his tightly. I know, because I refuse to lose you either. Then all that's left is to open that door. I chuckled as Seth's ear flattened against his head. With my free hand, I turned the knob and pulled the door open wide. We didn't talk much on the way there, letting the warm air rushing over us and the feeling of our hands together speaking for us. It felt like I had come so far in such a short time, and while I wasn't sure what the future might hold, I knew I'd have someone there regardless. Alright, this is love. Okay, there's the ending credits again. I am going to call this episode here. Thank you very much for watching. I know it might have been a bit longer than normal, but I think it was probably one of the better episodes we've seen so far. That storyline is probably my favorite I've seen in this game to date. I haven't seen them all, but that one I like a lot. I will catch you all in the next episode, and thank you very much for watching. Have a nice day.